Hello, my name is Stefan Korshak. I'm the Senior Defense Correspondent of Kyiv Post newspaper. Today, our guest is Alexander Vindman, a retired United States Army Lieutenant Colonel. He was a senior official in the Trump administration. Alexander is originally from Ukraine, and now he's back to the country where he was born. His goal is to be useful to Ukraine in the war. This is the first of a two-part interview. Welcome to Kyiv, and what do you think is going on the line of contact now? What's the situation as far as you can tell?
Thanks for having me on. It's frankly a joy to be on with Kyiv Post. When I lived here, before we get to the question, when I lived here back in 2009, 2010, this was a principal source of news for me and something that I still follow now. So, part of the reason I'm here is because I've been writing extensively on this war, our strategy for Russia and our aid to Ukraine. You would know this because of your own military experience. You can't really get a good feel for what's going on unless you're on the ground. Now, I'm not on the front, but I'm here in Kyiv talking to a lot of folks to make sure that I'm not way off the mark in my military assessments and in the strategies I put forward publicly and behind the scenes, because I do talk to extensively to Congress. I talk to the White House if they're willing to listen, departments and agencies. So it's important that I provide kind of the best views on what's going on. I've been pretty decent so far. With that in mind, I'm still kind of drawing some conclusions, but I think one of the things that I've discovered is that maybe I've had a bit of a rosier picture of how Ukraine could start to take back territory than is warranted. The Ukrainian armed forces have performed brilliantly. In a lot of ways, the political leadership has run a very effective war, because it's not just military, it's also political. But there have been significant losses. Russia has taken enormous punishing losses in equipment and leading formations. But the difference is it's a massive country with nearly unlimited stockpiles, worse equipment, but they have lots of it, and also personnel. You manage to destroy a formation, they could fill it with a less capable formation of personnel, less trained personnel and equipment. Ukraine doesn't have that kind of luxury, and the Ukrainian armed forces have performed masterfully, but they've taken enormous losses at the company grade level, lieutenants and captains. Yeah. The company grade level are those tactical formations that allow you to achieve battlefield success. Without those company grade officers, it's going to be very, very difficult to conduct, any kind of operation, let alone achieve strategic success in a counteroffensive. I think that this next phase, and this is something I've been thinking about for some months, but it's now kind of being validated by my assessments on the ground. This next phase of war is not going to be sweeping movements of Ukrainian formations taking back large amounts of territory. It's likely to be something closer to isolating Russian formations using Western equipment, artillery, HIMARS, and so forth, applying maximum pressure to break the Russians' will to resist, and in so doing, achieve some operational and strategic wins. That is most likely to happen in a place like Kherson. That might happen in a place like Zaporozhye, different areas around Zaporozhye, because they could potentially be isolated. Ukraine still has to hold the Russian armed forces in the east, around Bakhmut, or around Slavyansk. That looks like it's happening, and Ukraine might be able to achieve some successes in Kharkiv. The only way to make up this devastating losses in a generation of company grade officers is train new ones. Some of that's occurring in Great Britain. Provide some time and some space to train those personnel here on the ground. And the only way to do that is through the U.S. and the West providing much more in the way of support. Longer fires, more fires, strike capabilities. That gives the Ukrainian armed forces breathing room to start to build back strike capabilities, to start to build back combat power, to achieve. It also, frankly, will come at a time where the other things besides the military capabilities become more acute for Russia. Sanctions are starting to have a bite. They're going to have more of a bite as time wears on. Not as much as needs to happen. Russia needs to be more isolated to break the will of the Russian regime to conduct this war. but those things are unfolding.
Well, then if I could jump in, maybe I can hit you with this question, and that is, given that dynamic, those limitations on what the Ukrainians are capable of, and indeed on what the Russians are capable of, where do you see this conflict in, let's say, a month? Yeah. What's the situation on the ground going to be? I mean, look into the future. Sure. What do you think is going to be?
I would say there is not going to be major changes within the month in a large portion of the battlefield. I would say there's a couple things that will change. The way things are unfolding, Ukraine is seizing the initiative. Russia is going to be in a much more precarious situation because the things that we have provided, the HIMARS, are having some significant effects. Ukraine, over the course of 6 months, has built a capacity to wreak havoc behind enemy lines in occupied territories. That's not just Kherson, that's not just in Lugansk, Donetsk, and Zaporozhye. It's also in Crimea, as we're seeing. And that's going to apply pressure on Russian logistics. So I think those things are going to continue to unfold and make it a nightmare scenario for Russia. I think in the east, Russia is going to continue to try to make some gains. They're probably not going to make major gains. I mean, the tiny bit of ground that they've taken, this is a massive country.
This being Ukraine, I think you mean, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
The country that I'm presently sitting in. Therefore, they're taking punishing losses in these little gains. It's not going to change that much. There might be some more favorable conditions in Kharkiv. The best place to look over the course of probably the next month to 3 months is significant Russian reversals in Kherson, which can be more easily isolated. In the span of 3 months, with greater U.S. support, with an allocation of both more HIMARS, the munitions themselves, more systems to employ those munitions, with longer range fires, with, I hope, eventually to see unmanned combat aerial vehicles to offset the kinds of advantages that Russia is looking to gain through acquiring Iranian drones, and with the provision of logistical support, which is one of the reasons I'm here. I mean, there's a lot of things I can't affect. I'm a civilian now. But one thing I can do is I could probably there are some ideas that you could do through the commercial sector to help with logistics. It makes no sense to me to have a logistics run, from the line of contact many hundreds of kilometers all the way back to Poland and Romania to repair equipment, critical equipment, the M777 artillery, the howitzers, or the HIMARS if they break down. You need to shorten those logistical times. You need to reduce downtime. You need to increase operational readiness rates. I can't affect how many systems get in place, but I could actually help potentially alleviate some of these burdens, because you could find contractors that could help repair the stuff. We've done it for decades with the U.S. military. So I'm here talking to the Ministry of Defense and other entities about doing this and not waiting for somebody else to give the green light. The U.S. doesn't have to give a green light. You could start hiring people to repair it, and that could make a real big difference. This war is going to be in part one on logistics. The other thing is, I think over the course of 3 months, you could potentially see all these pieces coming together in a way that does allow Ukraine to potentially achieve operational and maybe strategic, liberate Kherson.
Thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure. This is the end of the first part of the interview. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to see the second part.